Hi, Steve. Hello, my name is Stephen, and welcome to part two of the Bond films ranking. So, let's just quickly get back to finishing the list. So, the last time that we were on the list, at number 17 was The Living Daylights, and so now at number 16 is Octopussy. Truly one of Roger Moore's greatest Bond films, and another personal favorite of mine. Uh, Kamal Khan, really great villain. And Roger Moore does another wonderful performance, and Maud Adams appears in this film again. As I said previously in part one, she appeared in Man with the Golden Gun as the Bond as the villain's mistress. Here, she plays the character in question, Octopussy, and really brings far more depth to the character. Basically, she's a woman who runs this cult of women. She's beautifully gorgeous, a lot of chemistry with Moore, and really just makes the role her own, and is a far more confident performance. The plot is definitely one of the most intriguing one on the series, which I really liked, and also like it's a little bit not political. Like we get to see both sides. You understand when you see the movie. I'm trying not to spoil it because I want to get much more full in-depth review, but it's a really good film, and this should have been the film Roger Moore left on. Why? Because, well, it just sums up the Roger Moore era perfectly. It's full of action, great comedy, a little bit over the top, but keeping in the Roger Moore theme. See, this film came out in 1983 and was battling with an unofficial Bond film, so I wanted to make a bigger and badder than the one they were rival with. Because, see, the other Bond film that was out at that time was Never Say Never Again, starring Sean Connery. So for this film, they had to bring Roger Moore back for a box office battle, and this won the box office battle. And if you see both films, it's easy to see why. So yeah, really good film, but it's at number 16. Number 15, Spectre. Daniel Craig's fourth Bond film. I actually liked this. I really liked this film. It has flaws mostly towards the end, but it's really good. Christoph Waltz as the villain in question, as basically, there's no spoiler, he is Blofeld. We all knew this before we even saw the film. Again, he just does the role pretty well, if I could be honest. Creepy, insane, a bit creepy, insane, but somehow subtle. And I do like that we get an origin how he got his scar on the eye. I found really great. Daniel Craig, another great Bond in question. The Bond girl here, one of my favorites, Swan, very memorable for me, top 10 by far. I like how this film, all the supporting players get to have more of a role and play more. We get to see more of M, the new M, played by Ralph Fiennes. I found to be really, really great. Hicks, perhaps one of the most memorable henchmen of the more modern era, which we haven't had, and he's just really great. No question about it. Yeah, this film's main draw point is the return of Spectre, which we haven't seen in a long time in the series. We haven't seen them really properly and since Diamonds Are Forever. This brought it back to the Eon series, and I thought they did it really well. They could have done it far worse, so I felt this wasn't exactly a bad way to bring them back. I really loved it. They did really well. What else is great about this film? Well, the action is top notch. The opening is fantastical. The action set pieces are really great, and the new Bond car. Interesting fact: it was created specifically for this film. This car was made specifically for the film, which I think is the first time in the series that something like that has ever happened. And what I mean by that is, they mostly get the model of a car that's already out there, and then they cause it just gadget it up for the film. Here, they had to make it completely from scratch, and it's a beautiful car, and I like how it's used in the car scene. I found it absolutely great. I like how this film, Daniel Craig is finally the more confident Bond. There's no more recreation or him getting back to the roots. Here, he's a fully confident, fully done Bond, which I really liked about this film. But number 15 is Spectre. So the number 15 Spectre. Number 14, Okay, I'm gonna get flack for this, but number 14, it's Doctor No. Okay, okay? Doctor No, the first Bond film of the series, the first, and it has some of the most iconic moments: the gun barrel, the epic Bond theme song, some of the supporting characters like M, Miss Moneypenny, Sean Connery, his first time as Bond, and already off the first film, he just nails everything. And it has one of the most iconic villains in the series, Doctor No. So why is this film so bad? Well, something you should keep in mind when they during the Bond's first tenure for their first three films, they were trying to establish the formula. So, and the film is kind of vanilla, if I could be quite frank with you. I'm not saying it's a terrible film by any means, but if you think about it, if you see the other big, bad, and epic Bond films in the series, it is quite vanilla. But it does have some of the most iconic moments of the series. The most iconic line in the whole Bond series came from this film. One of the most iconic Bond villains from this film. So it really did lay some of the groundwork, but it wouldn't be till films later where that groundwork would be fully established. And it also has one of the most iconic Bond girls, Honey Rider, by Ursula Andress, who is the first Bond girl and truly one of the most stunning, beautiful girls in the series. Truly stunning. Definitely, without a doubt, always in every Bond fan's top 10 Bond girls, and it's easy to see why. She laid the groundwork. Her entrance in the bikini is just stunning. Dr. No, just a great villain. And also, this film was also responsible for name dropping a criminal organization that will, in many ways, come to define the Bond, the criminal organization. Spectre was first name dropped in this film. They will come to define the 60s Bond movies for quite a lot of them, if I could be quite frank with you. Anyway, I know that people say, well, it should be Dr. No's top 5 material. Yes, but this is purely subjective. But if you think about it, all these other films expanded the Bond formula and made it so epic. I can't really say it's really top 5 material for my list. It makes the top 15 because it is a good film. But it does have a lot of drawbacks for me. So yeah. Number 13. You Only Live Twice. Now this was supposed to be Sean Connery's final Bond film. After this, he wanted nothing more to do with the role, but he had to come back for Diamonds Are Forever when he was offered that. Of course, we explained why, but You Only Live Twice is truly the first. This was directed by the same guy who gave us The Spy Who Loved Me years later, and this film is so epic. As in, the cinematography is great. The fact we get to see Japan in a different time. It has the infamous Blofeld reveal, Donald Pleasant's scar. Truly one of the most memorable moments of not just the film, but Bond film history itself. And we got introduced to one of the most iconic villains in cinema history. I say one of the most iconic. Of course, there's other villains you say are the best in cinema, but this is one of the most iconic. And also, really the most parodied. Lots of the Austin Power parody stuff really came from this particular Bond film, if I could be quite frank with you. Is there some drawbacks? Well, yeah. Some of the Bond villains here are quite forgettable. Hans is another blonde henchman. We got that so much now. And the main Bond girls here, Kissy Suzuki, not my personal favorite. Tiger is a very memorable ally. Definitely, I want to get around to doing a villain of allies, and he's really great. But if I could be off the bandwagon, Connery, he still looks fit, but he kind of acts like he's sick of this role. Doesn't even want to be in the film when I see this film. And I could be honest, he's just bored. I mean, in the final half, he seems fun, but he seems bored with the film. We get introduced to some of the most over-the-top gadgets in the series, which would affect the next film in the series. But really, after Connery left, the film series in the first time was scared as they realized how we're going to continue the series without Connery. But one of the producers was confident enough the series can outlive its actor. And ironically, it's right, considering now that they've gone through several actors. But yeah, this is truly a great, stunning film. Connery's acting may be questionable, but it's still a good film. Great action set pieces, iconic villain layer, Blofeld's reveal, everything in this film is just so Bond. It's an absolute classic for me. Number 12, For Your Eyes Only. Roger Moore's fifth and the first Bond film of the 80s. Okay, what else can we say about this film that hasn't been said? First off, it's a very different Roger Moore film. Most of his over-the-top humor is kind of traded for a bit more serious spy thriller, which I really liked. I liked how the location here, it's directed by John Glenn, I believe, who did 5 Bond films. He did 3 Roger Moores and 2 Timothy Daltons. He did 5 Bond films, and all of them were really done good visually. He did this, he did Octopussy, View to a Kill, The Living Daylights, and another film, which we'll get to on the list. This was his introduction to the series, and it's great. I like how, no real gadgets are used. It's more of a spy on his own, a real believable mission. Again, after Moonraker, they had to bring Bond back down to earth. Roger Moore really does some dark moments in here, which is just shocking, considering his Bond's more lighthearted. The Bond girls here, they're good, but questionable. BB is perhaps one of the most annoying characters in the film, and something I also want to be about this. The villains are definitely realistic, but some might say too realistic, as they don't really draw you in at all. It's just like that. The opening is one of my favorite, and I like how it has some closure to the whole Connery 60s Bond era, really. And I like how it just closes that chapter up and saying we are moving on, we're finally wrapping that up for good, which I liked. It fits in tone with the movie very well. And a revenge plot also takes place in this film by the main Bond girl, who I really liked. Overall, this is just a really fun film. And but people say it's a bit too bland, a bit too basic, but I kind of like just a basic film where it's not too complicated and you can follow along. Anyway, number 12, For Your Eyes Only. Number 11, The World Is Not Enough. Truly, my opinion, Pierce Brosnan's best acted Bond film. Like, the performance here is far great. Now, there's something I would not deny. This film has problems. First off, the opening is the longest in the series, and originally wanted to be shorter, but I'm glad they did it long because it's truly a great opening. It's just full on. The song, again, not my personal favorite. Just kind of there, really. I like how this is the first time in a Bond film where the main villain is a female, not a secondary villain, not a henchman. The main villain is female. Elektra King is truly a great villain. Female villain, one of my top 10s. I just like how they really used her well. She manipulates Bond, Bond falls for her. A lot of good thing is done with her character. And Renard, arguably for a while, the last great Bond henchman, although you could argue was a secondary villain, he's in between. He's both a henchman and a secondary villain. He fits that category. But of course, Christmas Jones, played by Denise Richards, is always one of the most drawbacks of this film. Arguably one of the worst Bond girls. Like I said, Stacy is hands down my number 1 worst Bond girl, but it's a strong contender between Stacy and Dr. Jones. I like how this is the first time Judi Dench's M gets to do far more in this role. Really. And this is also where we get to say goodbye to Desmond Llewellyn's Q, and again, he's been around since From Russia With Love back in 1963, so this is his final time in the role, and it's sad because after this, a few weeks after the film premiered, he died in a car accident, and we got introduced to a new Q, who of course will be in this film and of course Die Another Day. I like how he does his a bit different, although technically in this film he's called R, or it's not to the following film where he gets the title Q. So really, yeah, it's kind of sad, really. Kind of sad that this is his final amount of time we get to see Llewellyn's Q, and I feel he just goes out the way he played the character, and We may get other actors to play certain supporting characters, but we can all agree no one can replace Desmond Llewellyn's portrayal of one of the most iconic supporting characters of the series. I guess this film has flaws, but it also has so many good elements going for it. If it executed better, it could have been one of the great Bond films. So that's why I've always had this film so high, because it had a potential to be one of the greats, but it just didn't execute it as well. It has flaws. It has some really good action sequences, and also in this film, a supporting character from GoldenEye returns, which we'll get to when that film appears on the list. But here we are. But let's get on. Now I've reached the top 10. Now, these are my personal go-to Bond films, and some of them are classics. Some of them are like, really? But yeah, these are my favorites. At number 10, License to Kill, a beloved. This should be one of the most beloved gems in the series. This is perhaps one of Timothy Dalton's best outing. Now, Timothy Dalton sadly only did 2 films, and I find them to be both great in the series. This film is a Bond goes rogue revenge plot. Already something different. It doesn't follow the status quo. Timothy Dalton really, plays the role very different here, very edgy. Something I really appreciate. What else can I say about this? Robert Davi as Franz Sanchez, one of the most memorable villains in the series for me. He does the role with so much complexity. He's a feared gang leader, a drug lord, very realistic, but at the same time, he has a bit of the charisma characteristics of a Bond villain. But also, he's rather likable, and he has a code that I've always found that fascinating that he lives by. He understands the meaning of loyalty and that it goes both ways. Something that's really a great characteristic trait. Dario is one of the most unique Bond henchmen. First off, he's quite young. I think early 20s, very early 20s. And he looks like this hood that was on the street, but is in such a high position because he was there with Sanchez from the beginning. You can easily get with some of the villains in this film. And I like how he's just something slimy. He's very realistic. He's young, but also a very fantastical way. He brings out his knife in such a magical way. Really captivates you. Pam Bouvier here, very unique Bond girl and a more equal. I rather liked that. Some of the supporting characters can get a bit dull sometimes, and I do like the revenge story. Basically, Bond tracking down Sanchez for what he did to Felix and basically killing Felix's wife. You could easily argue that this is the reason why he's doing this is because of unresolved issues from Bond's own marriage. Again, a big plot point for a certain film on the list and one of the greats in the series. This film has sadly gone very low in the radar in the Bond fandom community because it's just too realistic of a Bond film. And not even a Bond film to some people, but I like that it's different. It has its own style. And this came out in 1989. And this was during a time when where all these big blockbusters were huge in that time. Batman 89, Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, and I'm sure you could ramble on what other films came out during this 80s era and didn't perform well at the box office. And Timothy Dalton is perhaps one of the most underrated Bond actors. This is truly one of his great performances here. He really does the role. I just like how it's just so like Miami Bond meets Miami Vice, and I just love the feel of it. And it's a really great film. I don't see why people hate it so much. It's such an awesome film and experience. It really is. Number 9. Live and Let Die. First off, great song. Roger Moore's first, and already he proves as life beyond the Bond series can definitely continue with the right actor, and he stuck around for quite a while. He was in the film series from pretty much 1983, which is 1973, sorry, when this film came out, and all the way to 1985. 7 films in a span of 12 years. This is truly a great film. Kananga, a memorable villain. And the film is also, and it's one of those films where the villain is overshadowed by the henchmen. You got guys like Baron Samedi, Whispers, Teehee, all great henchmen. Solitaire, a really memorable Bond girl. Roger Moore really does the role well. One of the most memorable theme songs, and I love how it takes advantage of the New Orleans settings. And the film is heavily inspired by the black exploitation films of the era, but I just love that it just has its own feel, and it's really fun. The crocodile stunt is one of of my favorites in the series. The Bond villain death is very over the top, and that's considering that in the previous film, that Bond death was more violent and really brutal, which fits that tone of the film. This is more lighthearted and silly, which fits the whole Roger Moore Bond film era, which I really love. Roger Moore's first outing, I thought was really strong and a really good debut for his Bond. This is truly a great Bond film, and even if you haven't seen the film, you would know the song "Live and Let Die," which was, of course, surprisingly, played by Paul McCartney. Yeah, former Beatles did the song along with a backup band. I keep forgetting the name. But yeah, this song is just iconic. You may not know the film, but you may know the song. And it's just a beautiful song. Number 8, GoldenEye, another iconic film for the series. Why? Because after License to Kill, the film series has been on hiatus for 6 years, and to this day, it is the longest wait we've ever had to wait for a Bond film. For so long, waiting, Timothy Dalton dropped out and Pierce Brosnan took over the role. Then in 1995 made his debut with GoldenEye. This film basically has the feel of the end of the Cold War and Bond trying to move on past the Cold War setting, because people are saying, "Oh, Bond's not going to exist past the Cold War." He was outdated. I found that odd considering I didn't find many of the films really that set in the Cold War. Really, just sort of spy action adventures. You get some with Cold War feeling, but yeah, I didn't find it as much. Alex Trevelyan by Sean Bean, a memorable villain, hands down, really great. I thought he did the character well. You may get some muffled up with sort of plot and character development. I found him to be a really great villain. Now, I was watching a video a while back from a YouTube channel called Mr. Rogues, and he described him as a poor man's Two-Face. I don't get it. Sure, he may have a scarring, and he may have been a friend to Bond, but last time I checked, he doesn't have a split personality, and he doesn't have a coin toss or you know, 50-50 chance thing going on. I get why he may, but I disagree. He is not a poor man's Two-Face. I find him to be a really great villain though, because he wasn't really a huge fan, and I get why, everyone's to their own taste, but I didn't find him to be that bad of a villain, to be honest. But of course, one of the most memorable characters from this film is Xenia Onatopp. Truly one of the most famous female villains of the series, and she's just a wild card. That's the only way to describe her, a real wild card. In fact, this film just has a great ensemble of villains, which I really loved. And yeah, the main Bond girl here, Natalia, really, really, really great casting choice. She is a real modern woman. I like how she uses both her brains and, really uses her brains more than her looks. In fact, she uses her brains more than her looks, which I found to be rather interesting. She's a really fun Bond girl. Pierce Brosnan really has a really good introductory as Bond in the series. This is just a great film overall. And anyway, we've just come to part 2. Join us again where we complete the list with part 3 and get on. I won't be doing my separate videos. I really don't like doing that, but considering the time I've been having, I kind of have to. And we'll join us later when we do part 3, and let's see which is in the top 5, which gets the number 1. And until then, so long for now.